this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Faithless Forrest.
And I'm Leah Rollins. We want you to know, if you don't believe in God, you are not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and unfettered by supernatural beliefs.
Hi everyone, I'm Heath Brewer. On today's show, The Technology is With Us. We will speak with Rebecca Vitsmun about her life after the Moore, Oklahoma tornado.
And now we want to tell viewers about the show's sponsors.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meet up at a bar or eatery. Tonight's meet is at Flats and Taps, 7403 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37919. When you get up to the meetup, look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. And as Matt Delaney at Atheist Experience says, everyone is welcome to our happy hour for food, fun, and conversations, but if you plan to preach, prophesize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings. The first and third Sunday mornings of the month are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. The second Sunday we hold the Skeptics Book Club, and on the fourth Sunday we're mixing it up, sometimes with a potluck get-together in a member's home, which we call a reflections meeting.
And later in the show, we will give you our websites to visit for additional details, including times and locations. I guess we are going to swing into the news.
And in some local news, in Dayton, Tennessee, a statue of famed attorney Clarence Darrow will be installed on the lawn of the Ray County Courthouse, the site of the famous 1925 Scopes monkey trial, during an annual festival commemorating this.
A local statue of Darrow's legal adversary, William Jennings Bryan, given to the county by the William Jennings Bryan College, inspired talented sculptor Zenos Foudakis. Freedom from Religion Foundation and others seek to remedy the missing link, FFRF officials said. Darrow will soon take his rightful place adjacent to Bryan on the courthouse lawn.
The dedication will begin in front of the courthouse at 10 a.m. on Friday, July the 14th.
All righty. Well, today we have on the phone with us Rebecca Vitsmun, and we hope to talk to her about her life after the Moore tornado. Are you there, Rebecca?
Yes, I am. Hello.
All righty. And we want to suggest that viewers can call in and ask us or Rebecca questions. The phone number is on the screen. I guess how shall we begin? We've got the next slide, Rev, has that mailbox on it. And I remember seeing that mailbox, and I've been thinking I wanted to ask Rebecca the story about this picture of you standing next to this colorful mailbox since the moment I saw it on your Facebook page.
Okay, so that's Mailbox Peak. That is near Seattle. When I first moved to Seattle from Oklahoma after the tornado, I wanted to hike, and the one that I wanted to do first was Mailbox Peak, and I went to do it, and I had no idea how challenging it would be, and I think I made it about a mile up the 9-mile hike before I was like, oh my gosh, I have to train for this. So for the last 3 years, I've been hiking progressively longer and higher elevation distances, and I finally, after this most recent deployment, made it up to the top of that peak and slapped that sticker on the top. So I was very happy.
Well, that's
3 years in the making.
What is the elevation of that mailbox?
It's about 4,000 feet.
Yeah, there's not much air up there.
It was pretty thin, yeah. And I got to tell you, while the hike is grueling on its own, the last half a mile is just a scramble, just climbing rocks. So it's horrible.
All right.
So you said
there were a few times where I was like, I can't turn around. I've come too far. It's right there. I can see it. But it felt like I needed to turn around. But I made it.
So you said you got to put a sticker on the mailbox. What sticker did you put on the mailbox?
I put a Foundation Beyond Belief sticker. For it says Humanism at Work. and I slapped it right in the center. So that's, and it was right after the deployment for Foundation Beyond Belief, so it was perfect timing.
All righty, well that's great. So you didn't grow up at Elevation. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Louisiana, actually.
So
I grew up near, Louisiana and Mississippi. I spent a lot of time bouncing back and forth. I moved about 17 times before 10th grade in Louisiana and Mississippi only.
And Louisiana and Mississippi are lowlands where the air is thick.
Lowlands, and you just don't even go outside because it's pointless. I mean, it's 90 degrees and not very fun. And, the thing you see behind your house isn't too much different from what you see hours away from your house. So, it's not really an exploring kind of environment where I always wanted to live in one of those. And so I finally got out this way.
All righty. Well, so of course, we've chatted with you in preparation for today's call, and we've seen you on various YouTube videos. But maybe for viewers who are not familiar with you and your story, we've got a little slide that harkens back to your first 15 minutes or so of fame. You suppose we could get you to talk about what happened here that made people like me aware of you?
Sure. So I, on May 20th, 2013, my house was destroyed by a tornado. I was actually within my home with my 19-month-old son in the bathtub, watching on my laptop, and just right towards the end, they said, it was coming right for us, and they said, you need to be underground for this one, storm cellar or basement. And then they said, car is not enough, interior closet or bathroom is not enough. And, basically I just heard, you are going to die if you don't move now. And it was 5 miles away. So I started running around my house trying to find my keys. They weren't the first place they looked. So I was like, I'm going to die like this, And then I grabbed my keys. I found them the second place I looked. And then I went outside and it was hailing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get hit by a hailstone and that's how I'm going to die. But, I put my son underneath my body and ran to my car. And then I looked over and I was like, I'm going to get stuck in traffic and that's how I'm going to die. There's all this. But I didn't see any traffic, so I just gunned it. And what's really funny is I got to this red light and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to stop, right? Nobody's going to pull me over, right? So I just, made sure it was safe and then gunned straight through the red light. I didn't even have time to put my son in his car seat, so I had him on my lap, 19-month-old, while I'm trying to get away. And at some point, when I was about a half a mile from my house, I thought, I've got to put him in his car seat. He's going to die this way. And then I got out, and the Suns were whipping us around so badly. I was like, okay, no, I can't do this. And so then I drove another half mile, or maybe a quarter mile. I didn't go very far before, the winds weren't whipping us around anymore. And I finally got out, and I looked behind me, and there's just this giant black wall. And it was just kind of moving across my entire field of vision, and I was like, well, where's the tornado? Because I always think, you think the movie Twister, where you look around and there's this tornado that you see, but I was so close to it, and it was so wide that it just looked like a wall of black, and I was just like, well, where is it?
Looked more like a hurricane.
It was so strange. Like, I had never seen anything like that. And so finally it finished moving, and I was like, oh, that was it. That was the tornado. And then I, decided to go back to my house because I realized my cats were still inside. And so I went, and it was only like a quarter mile down the road before I had to get out of the car because, light poles were already in the streets, and I couldn't drive anymore. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, good. Maybe it went in front of my house. That's my thought, if there's damage this far away from my house, perhaps it just went in front of it. And then I, was walking, and I got to the corner, and I could see for an entire mile. So, obviously my house was hit, but it wasn't hitting me yet. And I was just like, but where's my house? Where's mine? And And, all the while, I'm holding my son, and at first I was like, oh my gosh. And then, he's 19 months old, so he repeats everything, and he's like, oh man. And I was like, oh no, hey, what happened? Oh, the house is fell down. This is so silly, because I'm trying to help him process, and he's like, oh no, the house just fell down.
My
and
goodness.
so finally, I got to my street, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, it did happen. It happened. It obviously happened. And so I got there, we weren't able to find the cats at first, but we did eventually find them. But when I finally got home that day, I had this iReports account on CNN because I had submitted some photos in the past of these hailstones that were bigger. They were softball-sized hail that had hit my house and caused all this damage. And so I had submitted those in the past. So I was like, oh, I'll submit these photos of my house. And I put, like 3 sentences. I was in the bathtub until it was 5 miles away with my 19-month-old. Then, I panicked and ran. This is what happened to my house. And they were like, oh, this is such a beautiful story. Mother saves child. This is really good at a time of horrible destruction. This kind of story is really important. We'd really like to interview you. And I said, sure, I'm a stay-at-home mom with no house anymore, so I've got nothing to do.
So you traveled?
So they interviewed me. Yeah, they had me go up to the destroyed bowling alley is where they were set up. So I went there the next day. So this is on the 21st, like in the afternoon or whatever time they do Situation Room. And so they had me go on the show. And so, okay, so they put me on the show, and at first, it's a destroyed bowling alley, so there are bowling balls everywhere. And my son saw them and was like, wanted to play with them. And so he's like screaming, balls, balls, balls. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go on this national interview with my son screaming balls the whole time. Like, this is going to be the worst thing ever. So they gave him this like dummy microphone that you can see him like play with in the interview, but they gave us, it's not hot or anything. It's just so that he would stop screaming balls constantly. And so, but they interviewed me. It was like an 8 or 9 minute interview. And the very end, he's like, he tries to close the scene with Anders, and he's just like, say, I'm Anders and this is CNN, but my kid's not cooperating. He's just like staring, and it's all silent and very awkward, and not like national television at all. And so he's like, okay, he's got to find some different clothes real fast. And he's like, well, you guys did a great job. We're happy you made it, and you got to thank the Lord, right? Do you thank the Lord? And I was like, oh my gosh, right? Like a deer in headlights, because I wasn't out, but I'm also not a liar, and it was so direct. And so I was just like, I'm actually an atheist, right? And so we both laughed, and then I was just like, I don't blame anybody for thanking the Lord, because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my husband's grandparents are watching, and like all this stuff. And so the interview closed right after that, and his producer ran up to me and shook me, which was weird. I was holding my baby, and I thought she was crazy, but she's like, you're gonna go viral.
Really?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, she did. She said it right away. She was like, you're gonna go viral. And I didn't even know what she meant. I was like, well, it was like a cute interview, but I didn't think it was that great. But apparently she's just really good at her job, because she knew right away, and I had no idea. I thought she was weird. But that's what ended up happening. Essentially, why would Wolf Blitzer ask that question? But right, so I just essentially, had a good laugh, and then that moment went viral.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, he was improvising, and I guess.
Oh yeah, he was shooting from the hip for
definitely
sure.
improvising.
Yeah, so that's new to me. I hadn't heard that in any of the other interviews I've seen of you, that he apparently was trying to close by talking to your son and getting something cutesy from him, right?
Right, yeah, and right.
Oh, my.
I don't think I have said that in the interview, so that might be new information. But yeah, he was trying to close. He was sitting there saying, okay, say I'm Anders and this is CNN. And it's just dead air. With a baby on the screen. And then it was like, oh my gosh, I need to close this thing. What do I do? And then, and that's whenever he went a totally different direction and one, you're not really supposed to go. He got a lot of flack for that.
Well, I feel a little more sympathy for him now, understanding that he hadn't planned to go there, and he just, he derailed normal decorum, let's say.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And also, what were the statistics on it? We're in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I'm this mom holding a baby actively, right?
Yeah.
So not anywhere near what the stereotype might be, and so, I'm sure he thought he was safe. Like, why would he ask it if he didn't think that was a reasonable direction to go?
So.
But yeah, he's now used as an example of what you definitely don't do. Right? I've had a couple of friends mention before that they've heard me use as an example in a journalism class, hey, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, you can't go this direction. Right? Not even if it's a mom in Oklahoma.
Wow. So, all right. The video goes viral, and then what happens with friends and family?
Oh, yeah. So, my parents didn't know. Nobody knew, really. And so they found out the same way the internet did. My mom found out through Facebook and YouTube, somebody tagging me in the clip. And so my dad's first response was, don't let those people make you their spokesperson. That was his sentence. And then my mom's reaction was but you're not really an atheist because you believe in a higher power. And I said, Mom, if I believed in a higher power, do you think I would have said atheist? And that was the end of that. But they were pretty prepped for accepting, especially my mother was prepped for accepting me because I came out poly in 2006 when she had to learn her way to navigate that. So she handled the atheist part way easier. She was just well, I know you're a good person. That's fine.
Right.
So she just sidestepped it entirely. Oh, I already know you're a good person. Moving on. And things were generally fine with Brian, with my husband's family as well. They were they were just well, we've known you so long. We know you're a good person. I was good. Yeah, everything was fine with that. Friends, most of them who were close to me already knew anyway. I did have some run-ins with some coworkers where they kind of would give me a weird 10-foot pole, they didn't want to have a conversation anymore kind of situation, which was odd. It made it very uncomfortable. It was sort of what am I going to do? Am I going to attack you or something? We were coworkers for years. I'm still the same person. But that was about it. So,
coworkers became more distant. I'm trying to imagine that. I've never been in the closet, so to speak. I grew up in Minnesota, pretty liberal environment. And I think people will, I can't think of an instance where people assumed I believed in God in anything like the situation you had. So it seems real.
Oh man, no, it was a very,
you.
very, very conservative environment where I was working. So one day, I remember this very vividly. It was such a uncomfortable moment. I walked into the break room, and the conversation was how atheists were really Satanists who worship the devil. So I sat down because I needed to eat, and my response was, I thought they didn't believe in Satan either. And they were like, oh, no, Rebecca, you're so naive. They do. And I was like, oh, right, what I know. I don't know. Right? I just, stated my opinion of, hey, here's what the actual information is. And they were like, haha, you're so naive. And I just went with it. I was like, fine, yeah, I'm so naive. What do I know? And then there was another woman who was discussing how her son was in China rescuing all of the Satanists, and I was like, I thought they were, Buddhist or something, the Asian religions aren't the ones that believe in Satan. And she's like, no, they're atheists, and I was like, oh, okay, So it was like an active topic at the, at just like a typical break room discussion table of, this outside thing. And I didn't want to lose my job, and I didn't want to be ostracized by these people. So instead, I just would give what was the actual information. I would give out facts, but I would never say who I was, because I was just not very interested in having that 10-foot pole treatment. Honestly, it did seem like that would be the direction it would go. Especially since whenever I would say, here are facts, they'd just be like, no, so you don't understand. Okay, well.
When someone found out that you were an atheist, did you ever get the response of something like, but you're such a good person? Like, no, it would go the other direction. They'd say, I didn't realize that atheists could be good people. Instead, they would never say, you can't be an atheist, or it's surprising that you're an atheist. They're just like, wow, I didn't know that about atheists. If you're an atheist, man, I like you. And so some must be fine at least, like it was always that direction, which was nice. It's better than like seeing some kind of like, oh, now you're flawed. Instead, it would be like, oh, my vision of what an atheist was flawed. And so I didn't even realize it would go that way. And now that I know it, I'm more actively telling people, like, if they really know you, just say it. Like, if they really know who you are, then they'll surprise you probably, because they're not going to throw out everything they know about you the moment that you're an atheist. It'll challenge them at least. It'll be more like, instead of being like, oh gosh, now you're a bad person, instead it's just like, oh, you are? And then especially if it's been years and it's like all this time, it's been the whole time. I was just afraid to tell you, like it's very different than I think I thought it was going to be.
Have you ever encountered any proselytizing? Have you been approached by anyone?
I sure did, but that was right after the tornado, actually, and it wasn't by friends or family or anyone I knew. It was volunteers. And so that's actually how my program got started. So that's like a good segue if you guys want to go that direction.
That's what we were hoping you would do.
Sure. I was in, so my house was destroyed. I was interviewed by Blitzer about a week and a half later, something like that. I was in my home. And so the way that they do things after a tornado is you have a certain number of days to go through your belongings, and then you just have to shovel absolutely everything to the curb, and then the city just comes with giant trucks with claws, and they just put it in the back of a dump truck and go bring it to the dump, and that's the end. And so I was really hitting the it's time for me to finish up phase. And I had these pictures that I wanted to take of all the objects in the home so that I could, keep them. And then, some of it was for insurance purposes. But at this point, on this particular day, I was going through one of the last boxes that I saved for the end because I knew it would kind of hurt the most. But it was like all of my son's baby clothes that were my favorites that I set aside because I was going to make a quilt with them. And so it was the things I never wanted to say goodbye to. I wanted to like make a quilt and have it until I was dead, like just forever. That was my son's, babyhood. And so I was setting out all these clothes, and these two volunteers came to help, and they were helping me do this, and we were kind of in my son's destroyed bedroom, and then one of them said, so which church do you go to? And I said, I don't go to church. And then she said, you're raising this baby without Jesus. And she was like angry with me, and I was like, yep. What do you say there? Yeah, I definitely, that's what I'm doing, but instead it was just, yep. And then she was, really angry with me, and she was started saying, you know, that God had put her in my life to bring me back home to him, and he missed me so much, and he loved me, and he loved my son, and that he had put her in my life to bring her son back into his love, and, you know, and all this other stuff. Like, her view of who she was, you know, all that mattered in the entire world. Like, I didn't exist. The fact that I was going through this trauma didn't exist. The fact that I was in, you know, like, letting go of my son's belongings didn't exist. Like, nothing existed but her and her God. And it was really traumatic for me, because, like, it was already traumatic. And, like, for her to call who I was as a parent into question, for her to, like, call who I was as a human being into question, like, while I'm going through all this traumatic stuff, it was just, like, the entire time, like, I was just, like, shutting down emotionally. Like, I just got quieter and quieter to the point where, like, it was just her talking for like 30 minutes, where she's just like telling me all this stuff about God and everything. But I also couldn't tell her, you know, get the F out of my face or anything, because I still needed her help. You know, the literal trucks were coming to take everything, and it's like I was right at the end, and there wasn't a lot of help. And so it was just like I couldn't get rid of her.
Wow.
But I also it was really traumatic. And so that night I was just so upset about everything that I was like, oh my gosh, if we have atheists on the ground right now who are helping out a theist, and they're like saying something like, well, where was your God when this happened? You know, like, they are doing the wrong thing. I've got to stop them. I have to find them and stop them, you know. And so that night I'm like searching on the internet. I'm like, you know, atheist volunteer, disaster volunteer, you know, like I'm Googling anything I can think of, and I couldn't come up with anything. You know, because I thought I would just give them this tidbit of information and maybe volunteer with them and go on my merry way. But I couldn't find anything anywhere, and so that's whenever I was like, "Oh my gosh, does this really not exist? Is this for real?" And so I found out, you know, I had gone viral, so I kind of had access to some, you know, of the more celebrity atheists, so that I could. So I went to ones who I knew were knowledgeable and said, "Hey, does this really not exist?" And they were like, "Yeah, no, it doesn't." And that's whenever I was like, oh my gosh, it has to. Like, we like to envision a world without religion, but how do you, you know, recover from disasters if you leave it only in the hands of those who are religious? That's not going to work out. You know, we're dependent on them. If anything, we're still dependent on religion after disasters themselves, and, you know, they're not going to stop. And
I would like
so
to
that's
compare.
whenever I started my stuff. Yeah?
I'd like to compare your experience with something I had in 2005. Hurricane Katrina displaced a lot of people. Some of them made their way up here into the Knoxville area. And the call went out for volunteers to help the Red Cross. They were going to need to interview people to process them to receive something like debit cards for expenses, because the banking system had shut down in New Orleans and surrounding areas, and so a lot of people who had means, it got cut off. You know, when your credit card stops working, it's a problem. And they were expecting, I think, many thousands of people. And I and other members of the Rationalists of East Tennessee volunteered with the Red Cross. The center was actually set up in a huge Baptist church, there was about a week where I was on call, but really only about 2 days where I spent most of the day interviewing people. But the Red Cross people made it real clear that, to all the volunteers that, we're here to help these people, and if you've come with, a mission, and they didn't say to proselytize, but I think that was, how should we say, it was on the plate because some had happened the day before. If you've come for that reason, go home. We're here to help these people.
Mm-hmm.
So at least the Red Cross was sensitive to the issue about what their volunteers, might be putting, stressed people through.
Oh yeah, they're they're pretty good, especially whenever it comes to their forward-facing regulations that they do, because they're federally chartered, and so it's through the government, and so they have to have kind of a secular stance on everything. I have heard that volunteers who are on the inside will face certain issues sometimes, like somebody will get into some leadership position and then tell everybody to pray, and everybody there, all but one of them have are fine with it, but that one person with an issue, and then they have an issue there, and it's not any fun for the one who has the issue to single themselves out to say, hey, this isn't right. Or the founding fathers would be rolling over in their graves right now, kind of thing. But yeah, but they are, especially forward facing. They know that they work with the public. They know that the public has, varying backgrounds, that completely diverse, and so that's a good thing about them.
Alrighty, well, Rebecca, we're looking at the clock, and this might be a good time to do our little mid-program break here. We ask you to stay on the line. We're going to identify our sponsors here, and then we'll want to come back and talk to you about things after the tornado and how that played out. All right,
Okay.
so Keith?
In case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions.
Shows are live most every Tuesday from 5 to 5:55 p.m. Eastern on Knoxville Community Access Channel 12 or Channel 194, depending upon your local cable TV network. Tell your out-of-town friends to see us streaming online at ctvknox.org.
Today's show is live. It's June 27th, 2017, and you can call in on the number on our screen and speak with us. While we take a short break, please watch these informative videos about our sponsors.
Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org. If you live in or around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else, well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, meets 1 or 2 times a week. We have evening meetups for fun, food, and drink and conversation. Find us online at knoxvilleatheist.org. The purpose of ASK is to supply a venue for community, camaraderie, and outreach to atheists, agnostics, free thinkers, and other like-minded persons in the East Tennessee area. Our Tuesday meeting is going on now at somewhat of a new location, Flats and Taps, 7403 Knoxville Pike, or Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee 37919.
All right, and the second Sunday of most months is the Rationalists of East Tennessee Book Club. The book for July is Makers and Takers, The Rise of Finance and the Fall of American Business by, I'm going to mangle this name, Rana Fororar. Oh, if you're listening out there, Rana, my apologies. We meet on Sunday, the second Sunday of the month at 2 p.m. The public is invited to participate. You need not have read the book to attend, but of course it helps. Visit rationalists.org to find the rest of the calendar of books and join us at the Knoxville location, Books A Million, 8513 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee.
First Saturday Adopt a Highway pickup is on July 8th, 2017. We meet at 5 p.m. Through 7:30 p.m. and we meet at the usual location, the Burger King at Pellissippi and Lovell Road. Remember to wear sturdy shoes and gloves and bring a picker-upper if you have one. All volunteers must watch the safety video, which can be found on the event link of our website before working the roadway.
Alrighty. Well, let's go back to our guest here. Rebecca, are you still with us?
Yes.
Alrighty. And why doesn't Leah ask her about what happens then next here? We've got a prompt.
You had contacted Foundation Beyond Belief, so how did that work out, and what did you do?
Okay, so what ended up happening was after I found out that there was nothing, I was talking to basically anybody who would talk to me about it. I'm just like, oh, this doesn't exist. I have to make it exist. I don't know what to do. And a friend of mine said, you know, you should talk to Dale McGowan. He's going to be here as a speaker in 2 weeks. And he's, you know, it sounds like something Foundation Beyond Belief would do. And so I went online and I looked up these people, and they had 2 programs. They really had 3 programs, but 2 that really stood out. And the first was called Crisis Response, where they raised money for disasters, and they were even raising money for Moore, Oklahoma. After the tornado, they had raised $45,000 to help those who were affected by the tornado and more. And then they had a program called Beyond Belief Network. And at this time, they have 125 teams across the country who have donated more than 100,000 hours of volunteer time. And so I was like, okay, well, these guys have all the volunteers, and they have they have a focus on disasters. They just need to, you know, combine the two. So I 2 weeks later, I found Dale McGowan he was speaking at Free OK, and I was like, hey, hi, hello. I'm sorry. That's an Oklahoma Freethought conference. And he was one of the speakers, and I went and I was like, hi, you're Dale McGowan, and, you know, like, you guys have these 2 programs, and I really think this is the direction you need to go. And he's like, you know, I actually have somebody on staff, Noelle George, and she has also talked to me about going that direction in the past, so I'll put you in touch. And today, actually, today marks the 4-year anniversary of me speaking to Noelle George, who is now the executive director of Foundation Beyond Belief. So she replaced Dale. And so, you know, but 4 years ago today was the phone call I had where I was discussing things with her, and we all decided, yeah, we're going to get this ball started. We're going to start, you know, constructing whatever it is. We're going to give it what it takes to make it happen, and then we're going to do it. And we have. So 4 years ago today.
So what are the things that you assembled, and then what would be like the first time you deployed, and how did that go?
So what we ended up doing was, over the first 2 years, we had on staff a disasterologist. She got her PhD in disasters, Samantha Montano, and she helped us develop our trainings, and she helped us to, you know, develop our systems and everything. So we had our first deployment in January of 2016. We went to rebuild homes after flooding that occurred in Columbia, South Carolina. We partnered with the organization St. Bernard Project for that one. For that one, we brought out 19 volunteers, and we donated over 450 hours. And then most recently, we deployed to Denham Springs, Louisiana to help with the flooding there. We brought 23 volunteers this time, and we donated 648 hours, which ends up translating to about $15,000 worth of hours donated to the region, on top of $13,000 in monetary donations that we gathered from humanists across the country. So altogether, we donated about $30,000 to help after the flood in Louisiana this time.
Okay, and is this activity on in Columbia, South Carolina, and then in Louisiana, where you're wearing T-shirts that say Humanist Disaster Recovery?
Yeah, well, they're vests. We put them over our T-shirts so that we can, wear clean shirts every day and get those vests nice and dirty.
Okay.
But yes, it's Humanist Disaster Recovery Teams is the name of the program.
And so even though it's Foundation Beyond Belief that's organizing it, the team that arrives as boots on the ground goes by Humanist Disaster Recovery?
Yes, that's a program of Foundation Beyond Belief. They have 4 programs. So the first is Beyond Belief Network, then they have Humanist Giving. Actually it's changed to Humanist Grants. But Humanist Grants has donated more than $2 million to secular organizations around the globe since its inception. And then there's Humanist Service Corps, similar to the Peace Corps for Humanists, and they work in Ghana. They take volunteers for a year-long of service to Ghana. And then we have Beyond Belief Network still has, if you have a local organization and you are volunteering in your backyard and you want to submit your hours and compete with other humanist organizations around the country for awards and grant money for your organization, you can join Beyond Belief Network. We also will, put out blogs and showcase the kind of work that humanists are doing around the country. We also, tally the hours so that there's a more broad picture of what we're doing as a community. And then finally is Humanist Disaster Recovery, which has both teams and Drive. Drive is a global program. We can raise money for any type of disaster that happens anywhere on the globe, where Teams only deploys to catastrophic events that happen in the continental United States.
All right, man, you covered a bunch of things there. So
I know.
Right
Foundation Beyond Belief is big.
Wow. So right at the end, you said Drive, and that was global, and I was trying to write that down, and I feel like I didn't process that. So meaning,
it's a financial program where let's say that there is a tsunami that hits Japan. We had that happen. We won't send volunteers to Japan, but we will find a secular organization working in the ground in long-term recovery in Japan and raise money for that organization.
Okay. So the hypothetical case would be you'd find a secular organization in Japan to help fund their material needs.
Yes.
All right, man, I wasn't expecting that at all. That's new to me.
Oh yeah, we've been doing that actually. I think that program started in 2011, and so and it is actually co-branded with American Humanist Association, AHA.
So if someone wanted to join Humanist Disaster Recovery and participate in some of these deployments, how would they go about that?
We have an application. If you go to foundationbeyondbelief.org/HDR teams, you can fill out an application. On the application, you not only select, where you're from, but where you're willing to go, and how much time you'll need of notice to be able to deploy with us. So if you can go anywhere in the United States, that's fine. But if you only want to stick to your own state, you can select that. And whenever something comes up that meets the guidelines of your application, we will contact you.
All righty, wow. So I'm thinking back to last fall. We had a big fire happen here in East Tennessee. The cities of Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg's, both vacation destinations, but are mountainous, and it had been very dry, and we had big winds come up and make big fires. Do you know, were you guys servicing our area? Yeah, I'm feeling
no, we were
blindsided
not,
by this.
and we were not, but typically that won't be something that we'll end up going to. The criteria for what kind of deployments we do, it's going to be to an area where the vast majority of the people who are affected do not have insurance. And we're not covered by FEMA and they fall through the cracks. For instance, in Denham Springs, 140,000 homes were flooded, and 85% of those homes did not have insurance. 85% of 140,000 homes.
Wow.
So I don't know the exact translation of that, but more than 100,000 homes had no way of recovering, so they're completely reliant on nonprofit organizations because the government's not going to fund that much recovery work. Where a lot of times in the case of a fire especially, well, the problem with flooding insurance is you have to buy it separately, where luckily fires are covered by normal homeowners insurance. If somebody didn't have homeowners insurance or were renting, then they go to the next tier, and maybe the government can help there. And so by the time it gets down to nonprofits, usually it's not as necessary for a situation like that, where in the event that you have 85% of 140,000 homes, they'll be in long-term recovery needing nonprofit help for maybe a decade. Katrina is still recovering through nonprofit work. St. Bernard Project, one of our partners, still works after Katrina because people are still living in these FEMA trailers, which are only 8 feet wide and only 32 feet long. So if you think about how wide 8 feet is,
Yeah.
sometimes your bedroom is 10 feet wide, right? If you have a 10 by 12 foot bedroom, you're already got more space almost, And so these people are surviving, a decade out in this very tiny little environment. Usually it's just parked in front of, what used to be their home that's, still waiting to be recovered. And so those are typically the situations that rely on nonprofit help.
Wow. Well, and as you were answering, I was thinking how I believe also like the Red Cross is often very involved with things related to fire recovery, and they probably were helping here locally as well. So I think I may have thought through some of the answer to my own question. So you guys were down in, I guess you called it Denham Springs, Louisiana, just recently.
Yes, we just completed our deployment on June 7th.
And we've just had another storm down there. Any idea how that fared?
They did, Cindy. I'm not 100% on the full picture yet, but I know that they were affected, and so a lot of the people who were doing the recovery went into response work. Response work is like immediate kind of. They did preparation and then response work, and so they were sandbagging and making sure that the area was ready to try to keep out the water from re-damaging those homes.
So, I'm marveling here how you've become an expert at disaster response. I guess even though you're not the disasterologist, you.
No, but she definitely did a lot of hand slapping for a couple of years there.
Alrighty.
I would say things wrong, and she's like, "No, that's wrong. Never do that." And I was like, "Okay, just teach me all the ways. Just teach me all of the ways." And so, yeah, she was hand slapping for a long time there.
Well, and I was going to say, this doesn't sound like something anyone. I was just about to go there. That no one. It's not a career one normally chooses. This sort of calling chose you in the form, of the events and more. So I mean, what was your educational background, and what may have helped, and now what are you trying to pick up?
Okay, so my educational background, I competed in math in high school, and then I was a math tutor for 8 years. I would be, I got like second in state and calculus 2 on the calc team and stuff like that in high school. And then I got to college, and I was a math major for 3 years before I decided I was finding all the answers to none of the questions I was asking. Then I changed my major to comparative religion.
Really?
Right. So I majored. What's really funny is I thought that I would find the right religion. I was like, Catholicism seriously, obviously isn't it. so I'm going to go see which one's the right religion. And then I walked away an atheist, really upset. I was like, I just wasted my time. I got a degree in nothing, you know. But now I guess I'm a professional atheist or whatever, and so that's good.
Well,
and then in high school, I also I got an award from the oldest and largest volunteer organization in the country. It's Kiwanis. They do Key Club, and they give out about an average of 7 of these awards a year. But I was the Sandy Vinegar Medal recipient, so it's like the most honored award that they give to, you know, a couple high school seniors, and so volunteer coordination. And so, you know, I have a pretty strong background in that, medaled in math, you know, did all these things. So my background was, you know, math and atheism, essentially.
all right. Well, wow. Yeah, I was surprised by the comparative religion thing. And I was just about to be, in a sense, defend that and say that it's interesting to learn about other cultures. It's not completely without value, but if you went into it thinking I'm going to find the ultimate truth, well, then it's without value.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it took a long time before I was like, you know, it was the best decision I ever made. I'm so, you know, like my life is so much better now that I don't have all of that baggage and all those things. And, you know, my ability to parent and my ability to call myself wrong, even just to say I can be wrong and I can be flawed and I can change my opinion. That's the value of that has gotten me so far that I no longer, you know, like I left college at 22, like this sucked, and now I value it very much.
All right. Well, we have about 2.5 minutes left, but the last minute or so we'll need to do our closing wrap up. So if there's anything we haven't asked you that you thought that you wished we had, now's your time to tell us the question you thought we should have asked you and then answer it.
I'm not sure what question would lead to this, but this is just something I thought was a funny story. Whenever we stayed in a Baptist church this most recent time in the back of it in a donated space. They didn't really mess with us, but, you know, I was wondering if we were going to run into anything. And something we ran into is that All Hands brings in people from all over the world. They had people who were from Germany and Greece and Mexico and all of these people, and our group were all running into very similar issues. We kept running into these kind of cultural guidelines that, you know, other cultures don't follow. Like, you know, there was a time where one of the women from a different country was changing in the common room, and people were like, hey, you can't take your clothes off in front of other people. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, you thought it was a communal space, you know, because that's something they do. And so I thought it was really funny that it was us and the international people who were kind of running into these, like, little cultural guidelines. And so I kind of made the joke that we're from humanist country.
All right. Well,
we're all the humanists from humanist country visiting all of these foreign Americans.
Well, that was great, but we now need to start the wrap-up here.
Get out your pen and paper. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. You can give us feedback by voicemail at 865-272-9060 or by email at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com or find us on Facebook, Freethought Forum Knoxville.
You can see this show on Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on this Knoxville station and online at ctvknox.org.
I should interrupt and say we will not be on show next week because of the holiday.
We'd like to thank you, Rebecca, for calling in today, and Rev for technical support, the staff at CTV Knox, and all of our viewers.
Nuns, those who identify with no religion, are the fastest growing religious group in America. Right here in East Tennessee, you will find that you are not alone.